We appreciate your time and commitment to this process. So let's open with a centering exercise. So why don't you do this? Take the second and third finger in both of your hands and just bring them to your temple and tap your temple. And then we're going to move to the forehead. Tap your forehead. And then you're going to move to the top of your head, and we'll tap the top of your head. So we'll tap temple, forehead, and top of the head 10 times in each location. All right? So go ahead and take a gentle breath in and out. Sit up tall, yet relaxed. Close your eyes or softly gaze downward and begin tapping lightly at your temples. Move to your forehead, then the top of your head. Repeat. Temples, forehead, top of your head. Lower your hands to your lap and gently roll your shoulders back, and then reverse. Take a deep breath in and release it fully, and slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. Thank you, everyone who is here. We really appreciate your being here. So for technical help, Nick is our go-to person. Please note his phone number and his email just in case, hello, Nick, just in case you need it later. We will be recording the entire meeting. What you say here is part of the public record, and it will be made available for the public next week. To find more information about the project, please go to OregonTolling.org. And to our community members, we are glad that you are here. You are always welcome to email your comments to us at OregonTolling@odot.state.or.us. Please add committee public comment in the subject line. As we move through our meeting today, let's keep in mind the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee working together agreements from the committee's charter. Listen, believe, and reflect. Accept non-closure for the moment. Speak your own truth with compassion. Listen to understand, don't listen to respond. Value and celebrate each other's experiences. Open hearts plus open minds lead to exploration of possibilities. Make space, then take space. Be concise. Bring your best thinking into the room. Attack the problem, not the person. Disagreement, frustration, and differences of opinion are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. So we've got an amazing meeting planned for you today. Our proposed outcomes for the meeting are that we'll first discuss and reflect the lessons learned from 2021. And then we'll discuss the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee game plan for 2022. And then we'll discuss the community feedback we've heard on the toll projects and how we can improve our work going forward on community engagement. So with those outcomes in mind, let's just look at our agenda. First off, we welcome you. Secondly, we'll reflect on lessons learned in 2021, and then we'll partake in today's meal, the EMAC game plan for 2022. And then we'll have an inspiring engagement update and discussion, hear public comments, cover next steps, and close the meeting. All right, let's kick it off with lessons learned from 2021. In the words of one of your brilliant colleague committee members, let's reground and remember our North Star. Then we can look back at lessons earned in 2021 to order our forward path. The Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee and the Oregon Transportation Commission are partners in furthering equity through the tolling program. The images on the screen remind us of the OTC's charge to the committee to bring equity to the tolling program by co-creating policy and strategy for key areas. They include transit and multimodal transportation, the health and safety of neighborhoods and communities, and affordability. In essence, this slide speaks to EMAC's purpose, our North Star. Next slide, please. We can look back to our initial game plan to see where we've been in 2021. So EMAC diligently researched, reviewed best practices, and workshopped ideas in robust conversations to formulate your preliminary recommendations. So in April and May, you worked on transit and multimodal transportation policies and strategies. In June and July, it was neighborhood health and safety impacts. And then in August, you took an even deeper dive into affordability. So in September through November, the committee gathered up your preliminary recommendations, also known as your preferred and policy strategy options, and you created EMAC's foundational statements, which you presented to the OTC in November. In a moment, we'll hear from Commissioner Sharon Smith and presenting committee members how that meeting went. So today, at our December end of year meeting, we get to say thank you and farewell to this initial game plan. It served its purpose and helped pave the way for the updated game plan, which we'll review later on in the meeting. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, on November 18th, the Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee presented their foundational statements to the Oregon Transportation Commission. Now let's hear about that meeting from the OTC's perspective. And over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Jessica. I have to apologize in advance if I have a little coughing fit because I've got a little frog in my throat. I don't have COVID. I got my negative test back yesterday, just so you know, I'm not contaminating the airwaves. But just wanted to thank you very much for the folks who helped present and the whole committee's work getting us to this point. You know, the OTC asked EMAC to help us create an equitable tolling program. And as you have been developing these recommendations on the equity framework, the OTC is really learning from you. We trust your recommendations and we believe that they will benefit the Portland community. And we really welcome this partnership because we need to have your voices and your understanding of what's happening on the ground. And in the recent OTC meeting, we did acknowledge that we're all a little bit in uncharted territory. It's new for Oregon, and I think it's probably new for most transportation departments and authorities to put equity in the planning stages before, even years before tolling starts. And the OTC is really excited to be working in this space with you and really appreciates all the work that you've been doing. And I think the foundational statements really can be the building blocks for your recommendations to come. And as our Chair Van Brockman said, people have to understand the why of a policy decision before we can determine how to do it or how much it'll cost. So we need to know the why before we do the how. And I think that the foundational statements really express why we're doing this. EMAC is really paving the way, so to speak, for outcomes that will benefit all of the community, all the people in the Portland region. And OTC is really thankful that you're our partner in this journey, and we really look forward to how you will help us embed equity in total. And just thank you. That's all I have. I think we can maybe hear from some of the other folks who participated. I'll turn it back to you, Jessica, and you can, send it to whoever you need to next.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for those insights. That was great. And now we would like to hear from some of the EMAC members who presented at the committee. So Phil, can you kick us off? And then Kari and Eduardo and Bill and others, please feel free to chime in after Phil's had a little bit to say. Over to you,
sure.
Phil.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Jessica. And thanks very much, Sharon. I think building on Sharon's comment and Chair Van Brockman's comment about the why, this presentation to the OTC, of course, was a follow-up to the one that we did sometime back when. I can't even remember what month it was, but this was a follow-up to that. And one of the things that I think we wanted to revisit and to reaffirm was exactly who EMAC is, who we represent, and out of that, why the equity framework and the trauma-informed perspective that have always underscored our work, why those are so important and why those lead up to those foundational statements. So those foundational statements didn't come out of thin air. They were based on the who we are, what we're doing, and all of the history that's preceded this. So so we spent a few minutes basically regrounding the OTC, at least I believe we did, on those fundamental truths, if you get it. The foundational statements, I think we tried to frame that in a way that said these are the big buckets or the big themes, and our recommendations can basically be grouped under one or more of those themes. So we were trying to achieve some alignment with the OTC around those foundational statements. And once we achieve that alignment, then we can do the potentially harder work of actually diving down and identifying those recommendations that will be much more specific. But it's hard to get at those specifics unless you basically accept the fundamental concepts that those are wrapped up in. So I think that's what we tried to do. And then of course we did spend some time going over each of those foundational statements to be more specific. So I think maybe I should stop there and provide airtime for the rest of the EMAC members who were present at that meeting.
Thank you, Phil. That was awesome. Kari, do you have any thoughts?
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I think Phil really summed it up really well. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add to that. It was a good conversation and it felt like a good opportunity to connect with the OTC. And we were really thankful to have the chance to, to have a back and forth and to open that conversation and figure out where we go from here. I think it was really clear that there's more work to do, but we've got a really great foundation, as Phil said. And I don't think I have much else to add to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Eduardo or Bill, would either of you? Hey, Eduardo.
Hi, yes. Hello, everyone. I agree with what has been said. And as I've expressed to the project team, I hope that we continue to have more check-ins with the OTC. I know that they are represented on this committee, but to be able to have that discussion firsthand is really important as we begin to operationalize the recommendations that come out of this group and really seeing how our work is put into the tolling program, incorporated into the tolling program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eduardo. Bill, do you have any closing thoughts?
I'm sorry, I do not. I'm very happy for the opportunity to speak with the OTC and share where we're at, but that's about all I got. I think Phil, Kari, Eduardo did a great job of summing up the meeting, and Sharon as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all, and Sharon and all the speaking members. We appreciate your insights and the updates on the OTC EMAC conversation. So I think what we'll do now is let's pull up our discussion slide, and we'll have our conversation about reflections in 2021. So after hearing the OTC meeting, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a pause. We're going to let you reflect on these questions. We're going to take a moment, a silent moment, and you can lift up your pens and think about your thoughts, and virtual or real, write them down. And we're just going to pause for one moment to reflect on 2021. All right. Nicole, let's go ahead and pull everybody back up on screen. And who would like to kick us off in a reflection on 2021? Phil?
Yep. Yeah, well, can I start? I'll just say something very simple. And that is, I really appreciated the fact that I believe this committee really bonded. I get the sense that both the personal and the working relationships and and the conversations that we've had over this past year have really created bonds amongst this committee, which I think makes the ongoing work, in that sense of the word, easier. I think we feel pretty, at least I feel, pretty open and transparent with everyone else. I don't feel like we have to be defensive, or that we are protecting our own interests. I think we're all pretty open, and I think that's not something that happens easily, and that's not something that you see a lot in committees of this type. So I think what we've achieved there is marvelous.
Wonderful. And I see your hand, Park.
Yes, I have the same comments, only less articulate than Phil. I wrote down the committee worked well together, and that we are united. Not that there aren't still thoughts that haven't been put to paper or whatever, but we're not split up into two or three differing groups that are bickering with each other. So I compliment the committee. It's a little difficult also not being in person, but we've accomplished that, and that's I think that's a tribute to our leaders, Jessica and others.
Fabulous. Thank you, Park. And Abe?
Yeah, I would +1 both of those comments, especially underscoring how difficult I think that is in a virtual space to form those bonds. So kudos to the team and project staff on that. I think also something we did well as a committee was adapt to changing conditions. And the example that comes to mind for me on that is just kind of rescoping and repurposing our conversation with the OTC. I think on an original timeline, we were supposed to present the kind of like the final EMAP recommendations on the projects, and through conversations, we realized we didn't have enough information to make true, authentic recommendations. And so we regrouped, we developed some foundational statements to keep the process moving forward. But we adapted to those conditions and made a new plan moving forward for the next year. And I think that's kind of just operationalizing that maintaining a learning outcome throughout all this, and underscoring some of that, what Commissioner Smith was saying around we're all moving through this for the first time together, building a toll program in Oregon and leading with equity. So that's something I think we did well.
Fantastic, Abe. Thank you. I'm looking to see if I see any other hands. Is that Michael?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to build on what has been said, and I just really appreciate that when we did, have our change of plans, we were able to come together on foundational statements. Like, I think that is really where I felt like people were putting in their energy and time and efforts, and we were able to bring something to the OTC in November. And so I'm, very proud that we were able to pull that together.
Great. Did I see John's hand? Was that John? No, James. Sorry, James.
Thanks. Along with everything that everyone's already said, I think I was just very impressed with some of the visual pieces that we put together, especially like that tree piece to talk about, I can't remember the title of it, but really how the group came together and staff came together on really pulling that piece together. Because I really think that piece, could stand up on its own as something that, could be used by others as they look at how you need to look at some of the challenges that we're looking at. So I really just think that some of the tools and things that we've come up with are exceptional.
Could I just jump in real quick? Can Nicole and Joy, can you come off video, or can you turn on your video? Let's do a little hands of praise and signal boost. Nicole McDermott and Joy Abuba. These are two folks, they work on the team kind of in the background. Joy's an intern with PSU here on the project, and they bring those visuals, they help deliver them. They're just awesome people. So thanks, James, for prompting that. Yep.
Thank you, Garrett. I'll just say too, I like to stay off camera when I'm screen sharing and all doing these things in the background, but yeah, this is a great group and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Garrett. It has been a really great experience just coming to these meetings, helping as I can, and just learning a lot.
Well, and I'll just say one more thing if I can, and that is, now that we're sort of talking about the staff, I mean, I think this committee wouldn't really have functioned very well without the incredible support that you, Jessica, Garrett, Chris, Nick have basically done. I mean, that I think that takes a tremendous amount of skill to kind of knit this all together. And Garrett, I know you sort of play in different sandboxes, and I think your ability to sort of navigate those sandboxes is remarkable. So I give you a lot of compliments on being able to do that effectively.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. And it takes a village. It takes a village. And we're also enthusiastic about working with you guys, and you guys inspire us every time we meet with you, every time we hear from you. So thank you. And I'm going to pass it over to Dwight. I see your hand.
Thank you. As I was listening to everyone else and started to put my thoughts together, I think what resonates for me is the fact that we, as a group, have been given a platform, and not just any platform. It's a platform that allows us diverse thought. It's a platform that allows us to, if we're successful, we're going to help a number of people. Many of the people that we help don't even know that this committee exists. And it's like planting a tree whose shade you will never enjoy. And that's what I think we're doing. I think it's incredible. I think it's challenged us to think. I know with all of the materials that you guys continue to send me, it has challenged me to read And I think it was Mark Twain who said, he who won't read is just as poor as he who can't read. And so I don't want to be poor, obviously. And so I read all these materials, sometimes well into the evening, with my wife wondering what I'm doing. So, I think mine is more of a thank you for giving us a platform that will ultimately lead to helping a number of people. And those people right now, we are their voice. They don't have a voice beyond us. And so I think that I take that role very seriously. And so there's no stopping point short of victory as far as I'm concerned. And victory looks like the folks that we have been charged with helping get the help that they need. So that's all I have.
So Rich, any other thoughts?
I had a few comments, but I'll wait for, I was going to see if Amanda or others who haven't spoken wanted to say something. Or John.
John or Amanda, any thoughts you'd like to share?
I agree with everything that's been said. And I said this to staff along the process, just amazing staff work, amazing materials. And really in this last 2 years of inconsistency, this has been a very consistent committee and a consistent conversation that has been really, as I have similar work, but it's really refreshing to see public agencies listen to folks and integrate thoughts and feelings into the material. So I don't think people could say that they weren't heard and their feelings and their ideas were not captured, because I think it's been a really good process. And I was reading some of the comment letters today, and I was like, I can't wait to see how we incorporate these concerns. And I think this committee makes a real point of trying to do that. And I appreciate it. And I think there are some things being done here that are a model. So just really appreciate being part of this so far.
Thank you, John. Amanda, did you want to?
Much else to add. I really, what Abe said about adopt really resonated with me. And of course, I greatly appreciate all the contributions that folks have made and the time that everyone has spent. I think we've done a lot of cool things together. And so I don't have a lot to add on that. And thank you, Jessica and Garrett and staff. I know this is a heavy lift, and I appreciate the extra pokes that you give some of us that don't always respond as quickly as others. So I appreciate that too.
Wonderful. And I think we've captured everybody except for Bill. Bill, did you reflect?
Yeah, I think I was about to sneak through here without saying anything, but I mean, a lot of good things have already been said, and I'm just going to echo those. I very appreciate the relationships that we've built along the way through this past year and through the committee work. I think when I first started this committee, this was sort of a dread because it was such a big task and it was hard to see our way forward. But as we've progressed, I feel like we've made meaningful contributions and we've done a lot of good work. And it's not just the folks on the committee, but it's the staff as well, as people have already shared. Strangely enough, I look forward to these meetings now. I look forward to our sub meetings. I enjoy them, which who would have thought tolling would be such a fun topic. So I appreciate everyone here. And I just want to say thank you. And I look forward to, oh, dare I say it, more fun in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Hey, Garrett, do you want to say a couple words before we pivot?
Yeah, definitely. And I always love reflection, and I'll mention some things I think I wish we would have done differently as well, in addition to all the wonderful kudos here. So this has been December 8th was my 1-year birthday with ODOT, work birthday. So when EMAC started meeting, I remember I was calling Abe and Dwight because I'd been working for the city of Tualatin and we didn't have a representative on here. So I was going to my way to weasel into the committee was going to be through Dwight and Abe. So by ODOT hiring me, they definitely saved many of pestering emails and calls that I would have done for those two wonderful people. this has really been for those of you who have worked in government or understand it, like there can be these small changes that happen that don't seem big but have huge ripple effects down the way. So your work on performance measures, your work on this setup and relationship with the OTC, where it's this partnership and discussion, are really new ways of doing government work and doing equity committees. And so we're getting calls. I've talked with people from Texas, California, Florida. They're seeing your work. They're watching the committee meetings. People are calling us up because of how great this work and how they want to see this as a model for other places. Pretty much in all those conversations with Hannah Williams and the work we're doing with the community engagement liaisons and how we're kind of investing in that is a national best practice. Folks are wanting to know, how did you pay for that? How did you set all that up? And so just know the work that you're charting and where you're pushing us to go really is having ramifications. It can be hard to see at times, but it really is changing that big infrastructure of a state Department of Transportation. Some of the things I think I wish we maybe would have done differently. We had the 205 toll project, the purpose and need statement for that. We didn't take that through EMAC at the time because we were talking about the equity framework and you kind of were early on in meeting as a committee. But that's an opportunity I think we missed there, but we're gonna not miss that opportunity with the regional mobility pricing project. And so that's why you've seen us bring that purpose and need statement to you earlier on, and you're gonna see more of that with Bill's fun-filled 2022 EMAC calendar that's coming up here. This also, I think one of the areas we constantly struggle to improve upon are, we know tolling is just gonna be really unfavorable for a large segment of the population. And we just recently had at one of these regional workshops, somebody who has worked on or tracked like 100 different tolling congestion pricing projects. And he says that it follows this public opinion goes from the closer you get to tolling starting, like if it's never been there before, the closer you get to starting, the worse and worse public opinion is going to be. And it's not really until those tolls are in place till people actually can feel and receive the benefit that public opinion then starts to change. So I know you all get the public opinion emails and the PDFs we send before. I think it's a constant just work through these EMAC meetings or through others on how do we address those comments and how do we work towards areas of like constructive, relationship building, because I know at times it can seem like we're sort of charging forward when there's a lot of people who just flat out don't want to have it. So again, still a balance in process and ways that we can improve upon that. We would love to hear. I think my other piece would just be, I'd love to see all you in person as well. That'd be great. This has been excellent to kind of bond and work together all virtually. Looking forward to that hopefully in 2022. Thanks, Jessica.
Okay. Hey, thank you all for those reflections. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is today's meal. And for that, I'm going to kick it back to you, Garrett.
Excellent. So one of our roadmaps here, we wanted to bring this forward because this was a part of the ODOT presentation at the last Oregon Transportation Commission meeting, where Lucinda talked through this in a little more detail, so I can send that video out. What I mainly wanted to communicate today was our roadmap, primarily for the Oregon Transportation Commission, but also for you all to see about where we're at today and where we're all the different decisions that happen along the way before tolls are implemented. And so specifically for EMAC, you'll see it here. This is like the longer term game plan, and then we'll jump into 2022. But there's really two sets, really four in total, and two sets of EMAC recommendations. We're planning for there to be a set of EMAC recommendations that kind of coincide with when the two toll projects complete their environmental assessment. Because remember, in that environmental assessment, one of the key commitments that are made there are through mitigation. And so those are those investments you see from ODOT that are at the project level. So our intention is to have EMAC provide recommendations and weigh into that process before that document is finalized. And then the second piece where we're kind of queuing up EMAC recommendations is before the OTC kind of begins and ends their toll rate setting process. And so again, there'll be a second set of EMAC recommendations. You see there in February of 2024, where it says EMAC recommendations on toll rates and revenue distribution. And then in early, in that May-ish timeframe in 2025, EMAC recommendations on toll rates and revenue distribution, where those happen, and they'll then kind of directly inform that process as the OTC is diving into that kind of finalizing piece of toll rate setting. So definitely more we can kind of dive into and kind of field questions, but that's kind of the high level overview of what we were trying to communicate in this slide along the way. Next slide. So in your packet, because in no way do I expect folks to read like probably the size 6 font that's on this screen, but is a PDF basically laying out in Excel that game plan. And once we kind of get your buy-in and critiques here today, we'll make it that more pretty graphic with icons and things like that to help with communication. But really what we're trying to show here is going next year to kind of these full EMAC meetings being bi-monthly. So that's where you see those grade months, February, April, June, August, and October. And those EMAC meetings will probably kind of maybe deepen those. Maybe that's like a 2-hour meeting to kind of work through the work then that will be kind of vetted and developed in a little more robust sub-team meetings. And really a lot of that shift is based on the feedback we got from this group about how you really loved kind of working through the details and the diversity of opinion and thought we were able to get to in those sub-team groups. And then the green buckets are kind of, these are the key actions, recommendations from EMAC that go into deliverables that are being created by the toll project, by the toll teams. And so again, for each one of these, we try to line up where EMAC provides their recommendations before ODOT or the OTC or Federal Highway Administration makes their kind of determinations or decisions on it. So that's a little bit of thought on kind of the intention behind this. And then that transition time would still kind of a bit of a TBD of what that looks like. We'd love to work through with you all on that. But that's an opportunity where we're thinking it's been 2 years into this process. That's what we asked you to kind of sign up for. And so we'd be able to ask that question again. Do you want to re-sign up for those 2 years? And we could talk about goals of how do we look at diversity as far as are there other groups that could be represented on EMAC? Are the people that are here trying to do that, but also maintain just the wonderful knowledge that's been built up already here. So those are our kind of high level goals. How that gets worked out is we'd still love to work with you on crafting that. Next slide. So each one of these deliverables, I'll just walk through pretty quickly, and then kind of the timing on when EMAC would weigh in on that. So the Regional Mobility Pricing Project, it's called Planning and Environmental Linkages, which is a federal term. It's kind of a pre-NEPA, pre-environmental assessment phase. So they're still looking at what alternatives will then be chosen for that longer environmental review. And so the scenarios, the goals of that project, the performance measures, those are all still in formation. And so we would love your expertise in weighing in on those and providing guidance on what ODOT then presents to Federal Highway Administration for the environmental review process. So we're lining up your action on that around April of next year. Next slide. This is the I-205 toll project. So aligning that up, your work, your recommendations on that with what we're learning from that environmental assessment from the NEPA world on that project. And so we'll be working early, probably with like a sub team of folks to really kind of pull out and identify from that list of 30, SOAD preferred policy and strategy options, which ones do we want to focus on just for that I-205 toll project, and really queue up for this committee then providing to the OTC in June and July of next year. Next slide. So in addition to what's happening on kind of the policy world and that level, there's also those strategic, what we had been talking about with you are like strategic investments. And so those are more so like a bus line here or investments into this type of transit and multimodal. So that would show up in what's called these I-205 toll project environmental assessment, which is the classification, the NEPA document for environmental review. So that is finalized by ODOT and then submitted to Federal Highway Administration at the very end of 2022. So we would have you kind of pull out those strategy options and weigh in on what you're seeing happen in that document in October. So it gives ODOT and time to consider those amendments or changes to the document as it heads up to Federal Highway Administration. Next slide. The low income toll report. So that is heading, it's kind of ODOT is reporting out to the legislature and the OTC. It's not saying that there will be decisions made next year, but it is a report that ODOT by law has to prepare. And so much of what we've talked about on this committee is how to address low income impacts. And so we see you all being a crucial part of helping ODOT deliver that report. And so EMAC's recommendations on how to specifically address those low income pieces in that report, we would queue up for that June and July timeframe with the eventual delivery of that report that gets finalized in the like August, September timeframe there. And finally, community engagement. There's not a specific decision around this, but of the like 5 main things that the OTC set out for EMAC, 2 of those main pillars of EMAC were to deepen and help further community engagement. We've also just seen one of the lessons learned from last year I saw was just a real understanding of what is equity and how and why is this process like what's happening in EMAC world, how's that connect to others? And so we put this on the EMAC game plan as just kind of a consistent thread to work with you all on how do we best communicate what EMAC's doing, how do you get feedback into the work that's going on. And so it's ongoing, but you can see in the game plan how we are more specific around, okay, we think we should do this kind of targeted engagement to help support those other work that you're doing on deliverables. Next slide. So Jessica, I'll kick it back over to you.
Great. Hey, thank you, Garrett, for that comprehensive walkthrough of the EMAC game plan for 2022. And I'm noticing that there is a hand raised from one of our viewers of our meeting today. If you can just go ahead and hold that thought, we'll have a public comment period. It'll come up a little bit later in our meeting. Okay, so we appreciate your patience and you will be first in line. All right, so we have about 15 minutes for a conversation or a discussion about the EMAC Game Plan 2022. I'm going to try to keep this to time, and we'll if there's anything that we don't finish in this conversation, we'll kick it over to the sub-team meetings in January. So now with the 2022 Game Plan fresh in our minds, I would like everyone to consider this question. How can we make 2022 a success for EMAC? And while you're considering those thoughts, we're gonna just add a few more questions for you to think about. There's no need to write them down because we'll throw them in the chat for you. But does this game plan successfully involve EMAC in key decisions? Does this game plan support the integration and/or translation of the foundational statements into your recommendations? What will a successful transition to EMAC 2.0 look like? And how can we support deepening EMAC's engagement with the community? So those are just some extra thoughts to kind of expand your thoughts around what will make the game plan successful in 2022? All right. Who would like to share their thoughts first? James.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Being on the navigation team, that also kind of helps because we were able to dive into this a little bit more, which is very helpful because I am not a transportation expert, but thanks to Garrett, I've got a limited amount of understanding. And so when I look at 2022, I think of what we really have is we're an advisory board. And so we have the opportunity to move recommendations forward. OTC, others make decisions. And so one of the opportunities that I see in 2022 with the spreadsheet that Garrett put up there is there's actual deliverables, and that we're going to have the opportunity to influence those deliverables. And I think it's going to help us keep our scope more focused as far as answering specific questions having to do with those different pieces, where I think a lot of the foundational work that we're doing is very broad, and it should be very broad and holistic, because that's what's required in that grounding work, where now I think we're coming to the nuts and bolts. To get the federal funds, they want you to check these different boxes. We need to check all those boxes. And that happens whether there's an EMAC or not. And so our opportunity is with an EMAC and being able to influence the decisions, the way that those different things are looked at. That is our opportunity as EMAC. And I look forward to getting into that work. Oh, and as well on the community engagement, to Garrett's piece, I look forward to being able to go out into the community, have meetings where people are actually there and, you know, feel the energy of the community as well.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Would anyone else like to share their thoughts about the game plan? Michael, do you want to say a few words?
Abe's got his hand up too.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Abe.
Yeah. I'll share quickly. I appreciate you know, Garrett, your summary, and I'm thinking about the points where we would talk about you know, mitigation from the assessments and reports and your findings. And I know we pack a lot into like each session, and so I'm just hoping that, you know, we have a good amount of time to really discuss like what those mitigations would look like. So maybe that could be a piece that we, you know, start via like email communications or something, just so that we have enough time and don't feel like we're rushed into making a recommendation or a statement without really having, I think, enough time to digest those really important things. But I'm really excited about like the overall plan, and thanks for working to lay it out. I'll pass it over to Abe.
My apologies, Abe.
No worries. No, I have a few random uncollected thoughts that I'll hopefully get out clearly. I really appreciate the updated game plan diagram. I think it's very clear. I really like seeing the explicit conversations laid out around 205 specifically, and then the regional project specifically. I think that in our conversation so far, sometimes that line can get a little foggy around which system we're talking about. And I think it'll be helpful to add some guardrails around what we are, what system we're thinking about. Also, in addition to that, I think we also want to be thinking about how those two systems connect and how they're going to interact, acknowledging that we're implementing one before the other. And so thinking about how that first wave of system changes will play out in the community, and then how that second wave of system changes will play out in the community. And so maintaining both of those concepts throughout all of these conversations. I don't know if I thought about the the question, does this game plan successfully involve EMAC and key decisions too much before this meeting? But for me, that brings up in my work trying to incorporate health impact assessments into different projects that happen around the county. A lesson learned around that is when you're trying to do an HIA, you're kind of separated from the decision-making process, and you're trying to keep up with that decision-making process and learn about what are the key elements that influence that. And the goal is always to try to get a little bit more upstream and incorporate that health assessment element into the core scope of the work. And so kind of akin to Michael's comment around just having more time to digest, like the earlier that we're able to engage in conversations around mitigations, I think the better to help us kind of set the stage for what we will be reviewing in June and October and July for those final deliverables, and incorporate equity into that throughout the whole process. And then I think my final comment is just kind of building off of what James was talking about of our success around using visuals to communicate concepts around the toll program. And I think the EMAC framework that we established at the beginning of this process is really helpful for me to talk about the work that happens in this committee to other groups. And I referenced the EMAC framework, kind of like 5-step diagram a lot, and the trauma-informed framework a lot. So I think the more visuals we can build around this work as we're communicating and out will help us kind of add clarity around what we are and aren't talking about when we're talking about tolling and equity and tolling, or inequity in tolling. So that would be a recommendation that I have.
Fantastic. Thank you, Abe. And I see your hand, Phil.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate all of the comments that have been made so far. I agree with just about everything that's been said. I just wanted to maybe add on to a little bit of what I think Abe was also saying, and this refers to the game plan, which I think is a very nice, very easily followed and understood timeline. I wonder about, sort of the vertical integration. So at any given month, when 2 or 3 things are happening in those horizontal tracks, how are we going to be able to integrate in a vertical sense the things that are happening in each one of those horizontal ones at those given points in time? And obviously, I think from EMAC's perspective, I don't think we would be able to absorb everything at precisely the same time without having some sequencing. And I think that may play into a little bit of what Abe was talking about. So I think that process will be important to think about.
Garrett, do you have any thoughts about that particular question from Phil?
Oh, it's a good one. I wish we could have a third dimension to this PDF that I just sent you that kind of dives into it. But yeah, you're right. That's how I think the hope a little bit, Dr. Wu, was to have those larger EMAC meetings, maybe have them a little bit longer, and almost how we kind of have built this cadence of where the sub teams work on the more kind of rigorous details, and you almost it would be then EMAC members coming and reporting out and kind of bringing that information back to the larger group in each one of these kind of areas. And then maybe as a whole committee, when we're together, just like by the fact that we'll kind of hear report outs and hear kind of the status progress on where these kind of, more guardrailed, decisions are working towards deliverables. My hope is that just in that space that we're all there together, that's where we'll be able to point out and see the full context of, these are our foundational statements. This is where we're headed. How do we see it now laying out into these different deliverables? So one, probably just verbally through that space. 2, I would see in any of these like equity fact sheets or other types of assessments, again, referencing the equity framework, referencing the foundational statements. Those I just, even in this past year, I found, like Abe said, have been very critical to help ground us and inform where we're going forward on it. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Garrett. Does that kind of answer some of your thought or your questions, Phil?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't think I was actually expecting
Yeah.
this complete, well
Yeah, if you have the
thought out,
answer to this,
definitive
definitely
thing,
speak up.
Garrett.
Yeah.
We want to answer today. Okay.
Right.
All right. Any other thoughts? I'm looking for hands. Diana, do you have any thoughts about the game plan? Okay. All right. I think that we're looking a little quiet here. Okay. Well, you know what? Oh, sorry. Diana's lost audio. All right. I'm not seeing any hands. So let's move on to our next slide. Can you guess what it's going to be? All right. Are you ready to go for 2022? So let's take a pulse poll. The pulse poll is going to come up on your screen shortly. And there it goes. Thank you, Nick. And just a friendly reminder that we're just asking EMAC members to take this poll. And members of the public, if you would like to provide input, please do share your thoughts. Visit us at OregonTolling.org for more information. So while we're waiting for everyone to take the poll, think about, are you ready to move forward? Do you think maybe yes? Do you need a little more info? Anyway, go ahead and put in your results or your thoughts, and then we'll see where we are if everybody's ready to move forward. Nick, do you think we need a little more time, or are we ready to show our results? Ah, wow. Okay. 90% ready to move forward. Woohoo! All right. And then a 10% person, we need to pause. Okay, what we'll do is that person who feels like we need some more work to do, no problem. We're going to kick that into our sub-team meeting discussion and or send us an email, follow up with Garrett and I. We want to hear what it will take for you to get to ready to move forward. But thank you, everybody. Let's move on to our next topic. All right, so next we'll hear from Hannah with an engagement update, and a discussion will follow. Over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, EMAC. Thanks for having me. I think Jessica, you described this update as inspiring. So I just wanted to throw this back and say that I'm really inspired by how many people help us with engagement for the toll projects. Certainly couldn't do it alone or with just the toll team. We have so many people helping us, our working groups, the transit multimodal working group, the regional modeling group, EMAC, our partners, our regional partners with RPAS, community-based organizations, our community engagement liaisons. So it's a big effort. So just want to say thank you to. You're going to see that your name comes up a lot in this update because we couldn't do this without you. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is some of this information isn't going to be new. You've heard about some of this engagement, but it's nice to sometimes do a little recap. So we had 6 equity-focused discussion groups, and those are really for our equity framework communities this summer. And one of them was led by Jermaine. So thank you, Jermaine, again, for helping us with this. And it was really our community engagement liaisons that led these discussion groups. They led the recruitment for it. So we thought that it would be nice to hear from them directly what they heard in the discussion groups from the communities that they work with. So could I get an assist playing the video, please?
Yes, I will do that. Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
people in my community don't think that adding toll will help reduce traffic. And most people don't want to have this tolling. So they don't like that idea that all lanes will be tolled. They would like to have options if it's possible, especially people that use on a daily basis, mostly for work and some medical needs, and that cause a burden, to their family because of the extra cost.
The burden that I heard from my community is if tolls is put in, what would be the effect of the toll, such as, are someone going to get arrested if they don't pay the toll fee? Are we going to have toll police? Like, am I going to get my car ticket? If I don't pay these tolls fine, or I can't afford the toll fine, what's going to happen? Things like that is the things that I think our community is most concerned of, and making sure, like I said, that is there going to be like a community-based organization or a program that can offset that toll if I have to cross the bridge 4 times? Where's the money going to go? Because there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be made off of these tolls. How is it going to affect the communities of color is our biggest concern.
Many of them expressed the concern about the rush hour traffic because they work, so they might not have the option to change the hour to avoid the tolling. And they curious about how the income bracket works. Is there any financial assistance regarding for the toll, or are they going to eligible for the assistance or not? Because from what we heard, many of them are low income or middle income, and they also wondering how they are going to pay the toll if they missed it. Let's say they received a letter from OregonDOT that they needed to pay the fee, and they might not know how the process works because of the language barrier. They trying to know OregonDOT going to have the accessibility for them to pay the toll, so they not violate any law.
We had a discussion group, and it was clear that nobody wants to pay for being on the road, but it was also clear that people also don't want to be in traffic. So everybody agreed on that. As long as we leave an option for people who cannot afford it to still use the freeway for free. Several people made comments that if 205, I-5, and other sections are tolled, that it would unfairly charge working people since they're the ones being in traffic during the rush hour, during the peak hours. So that was pointed out. The question was asked whether there will be specific and special programs for truck drivers. A lot of Russian Ukrainian men, that's what they do. They drive trucks, and they already encounter high fees for the road usage.
The community where I spoke with, they are concerned about the fee, that it's going to be a big impact on them because some of them, they don't have enough money. Like during the pandemic, they're not working enough hours. So it's going to be a big impact on them. And, but the people who are really have to use it, and they're concerned about the economic impact on them. But if there is a way to have some financial support or cheaper, that will be okay for them.
There was conversation that occurred around making sure that those who utilize 205 and I-5 frequently and those who are low income paid a rate that was less than other folks. There were other conversations that occurred in terms of wanting to ensure that the funds collected from the tolling fees went back into infrastructure projects.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Could I trouble you to pop the PowerPoint back up?
Yes.
When I get a chance?
Will do.
So I don't know if everyone had seen that. We played it at the regional workshops. So I know a few of you went to that, so you might have seen it there. So that was from our discussion groups this summer. And here is our slide, just for anyone at home who hasn't heard. We are looking at tolling on all lanes in both directions. 2 toll projects, the I-205 toll project, it's the dark blue, and then the regional mobility pricing project, and it's that teal. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So some other things that we have been up to, we did some engagement from June to November for the Regional Mobility Pricing Project. And here are some of the key takeaways that we got from that engagement, and things that we did to get these findings were we got about 6,000 surveys, and we did the surveys through social media. You might remember it was the simple surveys. We also worked with our partners to send out emails with the surveys, and also working with our community engagement liaisons, translating the surveys. We also got over 300 emails and letters, as well as web forms. And we did briefings. We had 29 briefings to organizations, to committees, councils, boards. And then we had 12 working group sessions for the Oregon Toll Program. So those are, those partners that I kind of referenced earlier. So that's the Transit Multimodal Working Group, our Regional Modeling Group, our regional partner agency staff. So key findings from this, you heard it in the video. People agree that traffic is a problem, but they are looking for a non-tolled option. There's still a lot of questions about how tolls are going to help manage congestion. Like how is this going to work? And also questions about the benefits of tolling. There are concerns about enforcement, as well as a lot of questions about the financial impacts of tolls, as well as diversion, especially in Clackamas County. And people want to know more about the need for funding. So why tolls? And they also mentioned that they would consider paying a toll if it saved them time. So again, going back to, is this going to work? How does this work? How are tolls going to manage congestion? So that really shows me that we have a lot of work to do to better explain that and think about what tools we need to use to kind of show how congestion pricing works. Can I get the next slide, please? Great, thank you. So some other things that we did this summer, this was in November. These were interactive regional workshops, and it was on the 9th and the 10th of November. There were about 55 attendees, and that included elected officials, community and business leaders, and agency staff. We had 135 people who attended via live stream. It was open to the public. And we collected 20 surveys and 3 evaluation forms. And I want to give a big thank you to EMAC for your participation on the equity panel. So thank you, James and Bill. And so some workshop takeaways are that equity should really be central to the project and really ensure that vulnerable populations are not disproportionately impacted. Another takeaway, again, is that that acknowledgement that yes, traffic is a challenge, it's a problem. More questions about how toll revenue will be used, and a lot of interest in investing in local transportation networks. Concern about diversion, it's a significant concern that came out of the workshop, as well as the question for, why do we need tolling? How will this work? Can I get the next slide, please? And also in November, we had a community-based organization discussion. You might remember this, I brought it up a few times. We've been working on it for a while. And this is really a discussion for community-based organizations that serve our equity framework communities. We did other briefings with community-based organizations, but this was really to focus on, again, those equity framework communities that these community-based organizations are serving. And we did something a little bit different with this. So we'd heard through earlier rounds of engagement that CBOs are busy. So and they have limited time, and ODOT, we have so many projects, and sometimes they're, it's confusing, all this information, all these different surveys that are going out. So what we did for this one is we hosted this discussion as the Urban Mobility Office, with the intent of bringing those big projects to these community-based organizations. So we had someone from tolling, we had someone from Rose Quarter, we had someone from the I-205 improvements, and we had the communications director for the Urban Mobility Office. And so we were there together to kind of give a high-level overview of those different big projects, and then have a conversation about, what engagement would look like, how we can make this as easy as possible on you, how you would like to be engaged, and then kind of dive in a little bit about tooling. So I want to give a huge thank you to Fabian. We really couldn't have done this without you. We were spinning a couple times to pull this off, and Fabian saved the day. He, combination of helping us with the strategy, and then also really being that, that point person for talking about your work, talking about EMAC's work, what they're doing, and making that connection of why it may or may not be important to community-based organizations. So thank you, Fabian, for all of your help with that. We really, really, really appreciate it. So here are some of the main points that we got from that discussion. It was really great. It was about 90 minutes, and we were able to pay people for their participation. And it kind of opened the door for us to continue kind of like what those next steps would be. Can I get the next slide, please? So we were able to get some good information about, what people want. It's a little different for everybody, except for the fact that everybody wanted more information. And we got some good feedback that it's just so much information that we kind of, we need to give it gradually over time, and be available for questions. So there's, some good opportunities to work with community-based organizations, invest in them, and to pay them for their work and their help with engagement, and really helping us reach those communities that we know we couldn't reach without them. So that kind of wraps up some of the work that we did this summer with your help. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. This is a perfect segue into our next discussion, which is how can we deepen the quality of our engagement, and what role can EMAC members play? So you heard Hannah describe all the amazing events that have been happening in the recent past, and particularly this in the fall. Maybe that will kind of give you guys some ideas on how you think you would like to deepen the quality of your engagement, and what role EMAC can play. So any top of mind thoughts? Don't everyone rush and raise your hand. I'm going to have to call on someone if somebody doesn't raise their hand.
I could also ask, you have the EMAC one pager that that you guys really helped us with, that kind of summarizes what you're doing. And then it has your foundational statements on there, and a call to action for people to give us input on what they think about the foundational.
And to that point, as a follow-on, we'll be sending that out very soon after the meeting, where you'll have the one pager and a toolkit to think about how you would want to use the one pager, and what things to say and how to start conversations. But any thoughts from any of you all about how you would like to deepen your engagement?
Well, I just have a question, if I may.
Sure.
And Hannah, you may have gone into this, and I may have, not heard it. But yeah, I guess one question I always have around community engagement is the breadth the outreach? In other words, who did we reach? How representative was that outreach in the grand scheme of things? And I think that then sort of leads into the question of, well, then how do we both expand but also deepen that degree of engagement? So I guess I will just start up with that question.
Certainly, Phil. And so Hannah got kicked off, so she's going to join us, come back when she can.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure that I can fully respond, obviously as well as Hannah.
I can help too as well, Jessica.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and respond, and then I'd love to hear from Abe and Park after Garrett responds to Phil's question. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, Phil. I think it's kind of how do we bring that information back to you in a digestible way, and in a way where you can kind of absorb it and then provide feedback to us on how we deepen that and how we go not just wide, but also make sure that that quantity is also quality in it. And so I think that's where we had, and we will bring back to you kind of that equitable engagement report on, what's our kind of own self-assessment of here are some of the goals we had, here's where we landed with it. Maybe that might be a good kind of, at least what I've seen so far, a good kind of check in the process. And then hopefully maybe with this game plan next year where the large meetings are a little more spaced out with sub-team meetings, maybe that allows us some more room and space to program maybe some like more engagement specific meetings where we can kind of take a deeper dive into it. So those are just two thoughts.
Thank you, Garrett. So Abe, I think I saw your hand first, and then we'll go with Park.
Yeah, a couple quick thoughts. I think one is just I always appreciate the requests from this committee to be a voice in various spaces, and so I would just say continue doing that with outreach. I know we're all super busy people and we can't always make it, but I would like to, and am happy to help in that capacity as able. The other piece I wanted to comment on was I appreciate the approach of kind of clustering projects and presenting it from the Urban Mobility Office and being sensitive of time. I know there's just a lot of dollars going out to community-based organizations in this state overall. There's a lot of ARPA dollars going out, and those are being applied for COVID relief and disaster relief. And the Oregon Health Authority just released a lot of dollars through public health modernization that are focused on a whole slew of public health activities. So there's a lot of dollars going out to CBOs right now, and is absorbing a lot of CBO time and effort in applying and implementing those projects and programs. So I guess I'd encourage just to ODOT to coordinate and collaborate with OHA on that work. Because I think some of the guidelines for activities that are eligible for that funding are pretty broad, and support just engaging on actions that are related to climate change. Which I think the toll project definitely falls within. So I think there's an opportunity there.
Excellent. Thank you, Abe. And Park, I think you'll be our last input on this for the discussion.
I'm trying to think of ways of getting people away from just saying, I don't want tolls. And I'm wondering if there's not a game SimCity sort of thing where you start out saying, well, if there were tolls, how would you like them? And when you raise tolls, the traffic goes down. When you lower tolls, the traffic goes up. When you discount low-income people, traffic goes up a little bit. If you discount half the population, traffic goes up a lot. That you have people play these games, and then at the end you say, okay, given what you've kind of come up with recommending that there be, if there are tolls, that this be the pricing and this be the rules and this be who's eligible to get through for free. Are you now, how do you feel about tolls now compared to no toll and traffic?
Excellent idea, Park. And I see your hand, Phil, and so I'm going to go back on my words. I'm going to why don't you say you'll be the last person. And then why don't we continue this conversation in our sub-team meetings? Because you've had some great ideas and it feels like you can go deeper in engagement. We just need to take a little time to create that path for you.
But Jessica, I don't want to, derail the schedule. So I'd be very happy just to make some comments at a later time. So,
okay.
No worries.
Great. And feel free to place your thoughts in the chat.
Sure.
And that goes to Phil and anyone else that have more to say. All right. And I see your comment, James. So we'll continue that conversation in our sub-team meetings. All right. So let's move to our public comment period. And welcome members of the public. Next up, we have saved time for a verbal comment to the committee. If you would like to address the committee, please raise your virtual hand. If you are on the phone and want to raise your hand, please use *9. And I believe there was someone who did have a comment earlier in the meeting. I see. Let's see. Is that, sorry, let me make sure. Maybe Nick, you can help me out. So let me make sure. I see Darren. Is it Darren?
Yep, we've got Darren and then Debbie. So Darren, perfect. I'll go ahead and give you permission to unmute yourself, and then we'll go to Debbie after that.
Okay, perfect. And you both will have 2 minutes to speak. And please note that your comments are welcome at any time by emailing Oregon tolling at odot.state.or.us or calling, and I'll give the phone number later. But go for it. Darren, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. So I've been researching congestion pricing a little bit, and I found that privacy is a pretty big concern. Now, I know you guys are focused on equity, but my question is, how do they relate to each other? So how can we achieve progressive congestion pricing where we're charging less for low income people while also maintaining privacy? For instance, will drivers have an option to be anonymous? So that's my whole question. You can have the 1.5 minutes to respond.
I'll say quickly about that, and I see you have Representative McLean on there, so on our title. So there's some state law around privacy that's existing now on what would or wouldn't happen kind of with that data, but there's definitely more work to be done before kind of tolls go on to help determine that the rules about it. And so we'll discuss that some here with this EMAC committee kind of coming up. That'll definitely probably be a part of that like low income toll report on it, because we have heard about that being a concern. And then you'll see more discussion about that before kind of it becomes kind of the rules get locked in before tolling goes live as well. So definitely something we're thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. And thank you, Garrett, for responding to Darren. So next up, I believe we have Debbie.
Hi, Debbie. I've given you permission to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So I am Region 1's mobility liaison. So I work with a group called MAC, Mobility Advisory Committee, which is about freight and our annuals and our oversized loads getting through. I work on 205 projects all the time. Abernathy Bridge is a big one that we're doing the next few years. I'm just curious, has our Mobility Advisory Committee members been part of the conversations for the voice of our freight and what they're going to be having to pay, or what's going to be increased for them to, go through this area that they may not have right now? I may be speaking a little bit too quickly. I just listen in on these. I'm not on the board, but I just am curious about how we're engaging with our Mobility Advisory Committee on a statewide level for our annuals and oversized loads.
Definitely, Debbie. So we've got some workforce representation here on this committee, but through that environmental assessment process, the impacts to freight, what freight would cost, you'll see a lot of that come through those different toll projects. Internally here within ODOT, that we kind of are doing our ability to, it's a big organization, but to best kind of internal coordination on freight and those kind of interest and that mobility weighing in on the projects again as they're being developed. But I guess the other thing I was thinking about, we're an advisory committee here, the mobility program advisory committee as well. If there are future opportunities for like project staff from the toll team to show up to do presentations on those committee agendas, that's definitely something we're open to. We've just done a whole slew, I think over 70 briefings here in the last 3 or 4 months to different committees like yourselves to help understand and get perspectives on it. So yeah, would love to connect with you after this to see about that opportunity.
Yes, I would love to talk with you about that.
Okay, I'll send you an email.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Debbie and Darren. Are there any other members of the public that would like to share their thoughts? I am not seeing any raised hands. Nick, am I missing anyone?
Nope. No additional raised hands.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you, Debbie and Darren. It was great to hear from you. Now, members of the committee, let's pull up the next.
Sorry,
yes.
I'm going to cut you off.
Okay.
John McCabe has just raised his hand.
Very good. Let's go back and let's hear from John.
All right, John, I've given you permission to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
John, if you're speaking, I can't.
I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone. That's why I was not. So can you hear me now then?
I can hear you. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I live where we're going to be affected by 205. We're off Borland Road. It's a basically farm community that I guess you want to kill us. Almost happened to me last night because people use this road whenever they think 205 is backed up. And when the tolling comes in, it's going to happen more. So like last night, I'm not exaggerating. A person highlighted me at Stafford Road all the way until we got up to Eck Road because I wasn't traveling fast enough. And one of the problems, your committee has nothing to do with it, but ODOT needs to get their act together and lower the speed on 205 and I-5 once you come across the Boone Bridge to 55. It has to go that way. It's a safety issue. And so people are still going to use these side roads. It's done in Florida, it's done in Texas, it's done in New York, it's done in Pennsylvania. They go to the access roads, as your study already shows, if they know that there's a toll there. And by just putting the toll on 205 will cause everybody to use I-5, and I-5 will be beyond capacity and everything will be a catastrophe. And so rather than making 205 the Petri dish, the I-5 needs to be brought in at the exact same time. And so when you're looking at equity, it has to be that way. Doing just 205 on its own makes it a danger to the community. And we probably wouldn't need to have these roadways expanded if you just drop the speed to 55 to stop these accidents. And ODOT says they don't want to do it because they're afraid of people that don't want it lowered from 65 to 55. Do they want people to live? Lower the speed. Thank you.
John, thank you for your comments. We're at time, so I'm gonna move on from the public comments. But members of the public, if you want to reach out, please do email ODOT with your thoughts at any point in time. So let's go ahead and move to our closing. And then we'll go to our next steps, which is the Navigators and the NEPA Scuba Team meetings will be held in January of 2022. We'll reach out to schedule those meetings with you this week, so keep an eye out for an email or two from me. And then the next full EMAC committee meeting will be February 23rd at 2022. So mark your calendars. And please complete the meeting evaluation. You should have received an email from Nick during the meeting. This is the end of 2021. Thank you all for an excellent, intentional and for your intentional and thoughtful work. You are making a difference. We can't wait to see what you will do in 2022. Does anyone have a closing thought? Sharon?
Happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy some time off if you can. It's important to do that because we have a lot of work ahead of us and we need everybody rested and ready and excited about continuing this journey. So please have a great holiday.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you next year.